Hello YouTube people, welcome to Melvin Thinks. I'm Melvin, obviously, and thank you for clicking on this video, even if it was only by accident. Now, I work in finance, and unfortunately one of the daily chores that I have is dealing with salespeople, and I take great pride in being able to tell them when they're wrong. One thing I see happen quite consistently in my line of work is them using the markup percentage calculation to achieve a gross margin percentage figure. And as you'll see later in this video, they're two very different calculations and they achieve two very different figures. Now, a few weeks back, I was working with a sales guy and I pointed this out to them and they didn't really grasp what I was talking about, asked me to explain it to them. So we ended up joining a short MS Teams call and I did a little demo in an Excel spreadsheet. So without further ado, let's jump into the spreadsheet now and have a party. Okay, so we've got our spreadsheet open. I've got my sexy headphones on, so I think we're about ready to begin. Now the simplest way I can explain the difference between markup and gross margin percentage calculations is how I remember it, and markup percentage is basically the percentage of a cost price added on top, and that gives you a selling price. For gross margin percentage, it's the percentage of pure profit generated from selling a good or a product or wherever it may be at a desired selling price. And if I'm doing gross margin calculations outside of Excel or not using calculators, if I wanted to do a 25% gross margin calculation, for example, then it would simply be cost price divided by 0.75, or 1 minus the percentage figure that you're trying to achieve. If I want to achieve a 40% gross margin figure, then again it would be cost price divided by 1 minus 0.4, which in that example would be 0.6. It'll make more sense in a couple of seconds. So when I was doing this demo for the salesperson at the time, I used a nice round cost price figure, so we'll use £100 or €100, $100, Bitcoin, whatever you want it to be. And then the sales price calculation would be, or the sales price formula would be, equals cost price multiplied by 1 plus the percentage. So in this instance it would be a cost price times by 1.25, and then the gross margin percentage calculation or formula, very different, equals £100 or the cost price divided by 1 minus the percentage figure, which, as I explained earlier, as a fraction or as a decimal would be 0.75, which then gives you a selling price of £133.33. Now, I think it's quite useful to see and compare the difference in gross margin figures and percentages across the two different calculations, because you can see how they deviate more significantly than others as the percentage figure increases. So just for demonstration purposes, we will do that. So as we know, gross margin is sales price subtracting the cost price, and we know the gross margin percentage calculation is the gross margin figure divided by the sales price. So we'll just copy that down, and as you can see, as a summary, the difference between the two, you've got a 5% difference between the gross margin figures based on the two different calculations. And as I said earlier, a few moments ago, as the percentage range increases, the difference between those can differ quite dramatically. So if we start earlier down the chain, 10%, you've got a 0.91% gross margin figure. However, if you jump up into, let's say, 40%, you've got a, let's do my maths here, 11.43% difference. If you tried a 50% calculation across the two, then you've got a 16.67 difference between the two gross margin figures. So this is why I think it's really important to understand the difference between these two calculations, what the purpose of them is for, and obviously apply it to what you're trying to achieve, depending on the scenario. Yeah, that's how I did the demo at the time for the salesperson, and I sent them it as a little template so that they could get their head around it and just have a little play. Because I'm nice and I think it's quite useful, here's the formulas. if you want to take a screenshot, so you can use it for fun and games later on with a glass of wine, then go ahead. But yeah, if this video has helped you in any way, then please hit that like button. Subscribe if you wouldn't mind, and then you'll be kept up to date with any new videos that are coming out. Other than that, thanks again, and hopefully see you soon. Cheers.